Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews. On President's Day, the fight for the Democratic presidential nomination has now come down to man-to-man fighting. Bernie Sanders has a lead to protect now and fears Mike Bloomberg coming on. Bloomberg knows he has to beat Bernie on Super Tuesday or have to fight his way all the way back from that. How long will Biden and Warren hang on? Much as long as they do, because as long as they do, they're hurting Bloomberg and Bernie, each in their own way. Tonight, the Democratic presidential candidates are taking their message to Nevada, to the voters out there ahead of Saturday's caucus. Nevada, which is the most diverse state of the first four contests, will prove to be a new challenge for all the candidates. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders heads into the state seeking to project the image of a frontrunner.
As all of you know, we won the popular vote in Iowa. We won the New Hampshire primary. With your help, we're going to win here in Nevada. We are going together to win the Democratic nomination. And together, we are going to defeat Trump and transform this country.
Well, that's an odd look at that camera right there, the phone in the way. Anyway, Nevada's Culinary Workers Union now, which is the state's most effective voter turnout machine with like 70,000 members, has declined to endorse any of the candidates. The union did, however, make clear by distributing flyers in English and Spanish they do not support Senator Sanders and his Medicare for All plan. Sanders supporters were sharply critical of the union for that, and its members lashing out at them on Twitter and in emails using some crude language that I can't repeat. It was really terrible language. According to the Nevada Independent, two top officials of the Culinary Union faced threatening phone calls, emails, and tweets, and their personal information was shared online. In other words, they put out the person's addresses so people can get at them or whatever, to harass them. Who knows why? In an initial statement, more than 24 hours after the attacks were publicized, Senator Sanders condemned harassment in all forms. All forms? And here's what he told the PBS NewsHour.
Obviously, that is not acceptable to me, and I don't know who these so-called supporters are. We're living in a strange world on the internet. Anybody making personal attacks against anybody else in my name is not part of our movement.
Well, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who has been the subject of direct attacks from Sanders, released a new ad today attacking Sanders' Twitter followers. In fact, supporters, commonly known as Bernie Bros. Here's part of the Bloomberg ad.
It is vitally important for those of us who hold different views to be able to engage in a civil discourse.
I said it was getting close. And in a news release labeled Bernie's New Bro, Donald Trump, Bloomberg's campaign manager writes, it's a shameful turn of events to see Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump deploy the very same attacks and tactics against Mike. At this point, the primary is Bernie's to lose and ours to win. Bernie knows this. Trump knows this. That's why they are united in the campaign against Mike. Senator Sanders hit back by tweeting an image of Bloomberg playing golf with Trump. Meanwhile, out on the campaign trail this weekend, Sanders drew nearly, look at that. That is a crowd. 11,000 supporters out in Denver. That's a Trump-style rally there. Just 5 days at the coming up to the Saturday caucus, one longtime Nevada pollster told McClatchy News this race is really wide open in Nevada, he's talking about. For more, I'm joined by Adrian Eldride, former chief of staff to the DCCC and senior advisor to Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. Eugene Robinson, of course, columnist at the Washington Post. Jonathan Allen, NBC News digital national political reporter. Thank you. I guess, where are we going with Bernie on this thing? Was he separate? Is it fair to say he was separate from the tough guys out there selling that really awful language stuff, chasing these top women at the culinary workers sort of back to their house? Like, here's your address. These nasty tricks. People play this dirty stuff once in a while.
I mean, there's a duplicity about it. Bernie Sanders has benefited from his online supporters helping take out candidate after candidate after candidate in this primary. Whether you go back to Beto O'Rourke, they go after Elizabeth Warren, they go
what
after
do they do?
Buttigieg.
What is the tactic besides using bad language and scaring people?
Well, I mean, in this case, you're talking about, it sounds like a lot of actual harassment. In previous cases, it's simply more of the political, trying to undermine the other candidates, trying to spread, in some cases, real information, in other cases, misinformation. But they're very, very aggressive, and they do not reflect what you see from Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail when he says things like we should be able to engage in a civil discourse. These are very, very different things that are coming out of the Sanders campaign. And by the way, that's not unique.
Did he distinguish that? Did he say something like, whoever does it, kind of a general kind of a condemnation of that behavior, rather than a condemnation of those people?
Right. I mean, you heard some of him basically saying, no matter who does this, right? That's a sort of Trumpian construction.
Yeah. Gene, what do you make of this? You and I have been around. I mean, there's a kind of a thing here. The nastiest thing I read, all the words are the kind of words here, so the worst sort of places. But we know all the words, all the awful words. They're all thrown at these top women, terrible language. But the one I grabbed onto was giving the home addresses out. Mm-hmm. What's the purpose of that? Except more in-hand.
Harassment is the purpose of that. Yeah. And look, there is a somewhat different tone. John is right that there are, fervent and sometimes obnoxious supporters of all the candidates, but there is a different tone coming from that wing of the Sanders movement, and it has.
How would you compare it to the tone of the people around him, the tough people around him? Because he's got some tough guys around him.
Well, he's got some tough guys around him.
I know their names, and I could use them, but I'm not going to.
But you're not going to. But it's sort of built on this sense of grievance, right?
Yeah.
He was jobbed in 2016
because they had debates during major NFL football games and stuff like that.
It's stuff like that, right? And he won the popular vote in Iowa, but he didn't actually win the Iowa caucuses. That was Pete Buttigieg, according to the way it has traditionally been counted.
Yeah.
The threat, the idea of the threat that all these other establishment forces are out to take it away from Bernie.
Is this smart for Bloomberg to jump on this?
It is. No, it's smart, but it's also interesting because this is the first contrast ad that he has put out on this campaign that contrasts
there's a phrase.
with the
You
Democratic...
are so careful. I love this. Contrast ad.
Okay. Where he's
most people call them negative ads.
A Democratic presidential candidate instead of Trump, right? Yeah. And he chose not to go after the economy, not to go after Medicare for all, not to draw a contrast on a policy issue, but to focus on the Bernie bros online. I think that's very interesting, and I think that he is previewing what is to come on Wednesday night, assuming that Mike Bloomberg gets on that debate stage is one poll away.
Yeah, well, he gets on that stage Wednesday night, first time, new kid on the block. Everybody's going to be going after him, the new kid. It's going to be like tissue rejection from all of them, right?
Absolutely. Look, they're going to say he's not a Democrat. He doesn't represent the party.
Well, Bernie isn't a Democrat either, technically.
Correct. I mean, the two leading, or certainly the most talked about candidates right now are the ones that don't associate with the party, and one who was the last great Republican mayor of New York.
All of whom had the option to run on the Democratic ticket at any time they wanted to.
Mike Bloomberg's charge here is to start throwing haymakers. He's going to make an argument to the Democratic Party that you need to beat Donald Trump down, and that he can protect the Democratic Party, and that he can be its champion, and that he can knock Donald Trump out. And the first thing he's going to do is start throwing punches at these other Democrats who have been not doing anything on the debate stages for the last year.
I think so, because you remember, like, all of 4 years ago, there was a candidate named Trump who got ganged up on the debate stage, right, by all the Republican establishment candidates, and he punched back hard in his way, and the rest is history. Now, if I don't know if Bloomberg is capable of that sort of performance, or would try to do that sort of performance on the debate stage. But
he was like Robert De Niro. And you looking at me? You talking to me?
Yeah,
it's like that kind of behavior.
I think all the moderates, though, have to be very careful about the way they approach this debate, because if they go with their gut instincts, which is likely to pile on Mike Bloomberg and on his debut on the debate stage, Bernie Sanders may come out of this looking regal and looking fantastic, while the moderate, pragmatic wing of the party is kind of disheveled.
And you give Bernie this boost, and he gets a lead in delegates, and then where are you?
We're all teachers at our best. So here's the thought for a lecture. The shape of the field determines the winner. And when Jimmy Carter ran against 4 or 5 liberals back in '76, they all bunched together and siphoned each other's votes away, and he walked in as a moderate. This time around, the opposite can happen. You got 4 moderates in the race, including Bloomberg now, and Biden's hanging in there. and of course, Pete, and of course, Elizabeth. They're all there. We all familiar. We call them by their first names. We all know them well. They're all going to be around. But one guy on the left, on the progressive left, he picks up the marbles, just like Jimmy Carter picked up the marbles as a moderate, right?
That's the strategy for him, and he certainly tried to distance Warren. She wanted to be the progressive candidate and fight him for that a little bit.
He won the intramurals, though.
And he won the intramurals, and he sort of knocked her into that moderate lane. And he cleaned up, especially after his heart attack. A lot of Bernie Sanders supporters came home after that.
Yeah.
They said this is, you heard Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talk about it in those sort of very passionate, personal terms. So the one thing he has a problem with is if he doesn't come into that convention with a serious number of delegates, the party's going to gang up on him.
Well, but Michelle Goldberg said something here the other day, which I think is true, but I want to run it down the tail because I think we are getting to this. Super Tuesday is only, 2 weeks off tomorrow. This is it. This is so close to Armageddon time, reckoning time. It's not Armageddon. How about something like gunfight at the OK Corral, something a little less than that? She said if Bernie wins the plurality, I think she meant the popular vote, most votes cast in the primaries, in the caucuses, he can't be denied. Is that your view? Can't be denied. If he gets 38, he can't be denied, 38%.
I think there'll be a serious attempt to deny him if he does, but it depends on the size of the plurality, right? If he comes in, what you need 1,900 some delegates?
1,991.
Well, suppose he's at 40%.
So if he comes in with 1,700 delegates, he's that close. No,
but let's take a reasonable bet. Suppose he's at 35%. Or 30%, but he's got the most.
But I think that's why he wanted the raw numbers to come out of the caucuses this time, because he wants to make the argument that I have a popular number.
Well, that's exactly. Let's put this to the table, up or down. Can you do this? Yes or no? As a journalist, we can all do this. You can start. He comes in with about 35%, which is really high for him. He's getting about 27. Okay, let's say he comes in at 30%. Does he own it?
There's a war.
And nobody else has 30.
There's a war over it, and he does not own it. And part of the reason is that his people were on the commission that wrote the rules for this time that allowed somebody who came in 30% of the delegates not to do it. So somebody who had less
votes than him could be the nominee.
That's true, or somebody who wasn't even in the mix.
Yeah.
I don't think that's
I totally
going to
agree. But I don't think 30% is enough to guarantee you.
Okay, by the way, is there any chance Hillary will be drafted?
I doubt it.
Sherrod Brown. In a backroom.
I would not rule out anything at this point in February.
The Democrats are not going to nominate somebody on the floor of the convention who did not run for president.
Okay, that's a strong view.
That I can guarantee.
Even if they're ready to go down to total defeat. Anyway, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, I talked to him on the phone. They were going to have him on Friday. He's a political kingmaker out in Nevada. He warned against counting Joe Biden out of the race today. Let's watch Harry Reid.
I think it's way too early to count Joe Biden out. As I've said here this morning several times already, Iowa and New Hampshire are not representative of the country. He's going to do well in Nevada. He's going to do extremely well in South Carolina. So people should not be counting Joe Biden out of the race yet.
Well, that's really the question. This race, Gene, is not winnowing out.
No,
he's still in the race. Pete Buttigieg has a right to stay. Clearly, he's done too well. Elizabeth Warren's still in it, and of course, Amy Klobuchar
is living off.
You've got a lot of people surviving. Well. Exactly. It used to be 2 tickets out of this, 1 ticket out of that. They're all still got tickets.
Right, and so
that kills the chances of Bloomberg uniting the moderates.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody gets out. And, well, if Biden finishes 3rd or 4th in South Carolina, I think he gets out, right? Because that would
Have you caught his, you were on that show on Meet the Press yesterday. I watched you there when he said, I have to do well in South Carolina.
No, he needs to win South Carolina. But, Jim Clyburn said the other day that if the election were today, Biden would win South Carolina. And I don't think Jim says that lightly.
Well, I think Biden would have been doing a lot better if he'd done this show. He hasn't done it yet. And I don't know what that's all about. But I'm telling you, unless you get out there and get in the arena, and this is the arena, you got a shot. Nobody wins the presidency by not showing up. Anyway, that's a pretty tough shot, and it was intended. Thank you, Andrea Elrod. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hillary's not getting in this race. Okay, thank you. Eugene Robinson and Jonathan Allen, thank you. Coming up.